Hey guys, number one Babadook fan here with a really bad cold. Hi everyone. I do have a bad cold, but it's not that bad. All right. Remember, case closed. Hey kids, Mithri. Do you remember that old in joke? So I'm reading Case Closed again. It's so good. There's really no way to review it because it's absolutely perfect at doing exactly what it says it's gonna do. One of my commenters mentioned that some of the later mysteries involve some really, dark materials that the criminals get up to. So I'm probably going to have to update my one sentence recommendation of Case Closed to "Hey kids," with parental guidance, murder mysteries. And one interesting little thing that popped out at me: Japanese cultural hit 3 times. He's at this hotel called the Benkei Hotel, and they mention that there is this historical figure, Benkei Musashibo, who died standing up with a bunch of arrows in him. And I just realized, oh, I bet that's the inspiration of all those anime scenes where the guy dies on his feet or is knocked out standing up or something. Like My Hero Academia has something like that. And I love parents, even though there's some mature, like, grisly murders in these books, like any mature young adult who reads these is going to get like a giant library of good book recommendations. Man, my cold is bad. Philip Marlowe from The Long Goodbye. So, everything. Like, I think Gosho Aoyama has read and seen every mystery in existence. So, Sniff Squad. Remember Sniff Squad. All right, so looking at Lowriders Blast from the Past, written by Kathy Camper, illustrated by Raoul III. This is a prequel to Lowriders in Space and Lowriders to the Center of the Earth. And this comes out of Portland, Oregon. So Kathy Camper is a founding member of like the Portland, Portland Women of Color Zine Collective. And I love how, like, Raoul III's thank you letter, he just thanks all the kids he grew up fighting when he was a little kid. So when I say, like, Portland, Oregon, you already can form some expectations of the type of content it's going to be touching on. And the problem I've been thinking about recently is anti-SJW YouTube dead, doomed, or is it all just pointless? Is it all just outrage, monetizing outrage, and not actually producing anything of value? And the thing I've been thinking about is I do think that kind of comics and art Twitter, even though, like, Twitter and social media gets crazy, I actually think we're kind of in a temporary peaceful position where I think Donald Trump probably absorbs most of people's daily outrage. Like, you want to feel daily outrage because outrage makes you feel good. So people who would normally direct their outrage on you are instead directing their outrage on Donald Trump. It's like that great line from that weird hippie lady in the Democrat national debates where she talked about Donald Trump being a dark psychic force. Well, he kind of is, in the sense that he sort of absorbs all the hate that would normally get thrown at you. But what that means is, I think, like, the next presidential election, things are going to get hectic again. So one of the things I'm thinking about for my own channel is, do I just want to complain about SJWs, or do I want to actually maybe talk to SJWs, maybe in a fruitful way? And related to that, is there a big difference to you if something is social justice propaganda, meaning it's just ineffective at spreading its message, it just slams you over the head with it and you feel like you're reading a pamphlet? Or does it still bother you if something is actually effective and subtle about working its worldview into the story? So Lowriders Blast from the Past is, I think, teaching several, like, intersectional ideas from the intersectional, postmodern perspective for children. And it sneaks these into the narrative in a pretty subtle, sophisticated way, where I think most kids who would read this would just enjoy this. They'd see the cute animals, kind of a cool, fun 1930s style. I definitely have a lot of respect for Raoul III's drawing style. It's not just like a 30s cartoon style, but lots of, like, different colors to give it a little bit of vibrancy. I think he really nails, like, the appeal and charm of old school animal characters. Kathy Camper, I'd say the narrative side of things, it's a bit straightforward and it's a little on the nose. Like, it's kind of obvious that this was meant to teach kids a few lessons, like Magic School Bus style, but it's not always that effective, I think, at having like a clean transition between like the hey kids, let's learn about this thing, and then back to the normal narrative. You can kind of tell where the cuts were, where she's thinking, okay, now I'm going to put in the cultural lesson for kids. So jumping ahead, so things I like fart humor. Kids love fart humor, and it opens with a lot of fart humor, and it opens with like a kind of like a pretty long introduction, like saying this is like the heroic journey of these three bestest friends. And so the first theme is Illyrio, a mosquito, and he's an artist, and his dad travels the world, and he finds interesting native or indigenous words that he writes down and brings back to his son, because his son likes to use these as inspiration for graffiti or for mural art. So he'll kind of do like a calligraphic interpretation of the word, and he'll do a painting and murales out in public. There's Spanish, which is kind of like a motif of a lot of these, educational, hey kids, let's learn Spanish comics. But they actually do a pretty good job of like writing whole sentences in Spanish, so it doesn't feel like it's trying to teach me like one Spanish vocab word. It feels like these are native Spanish speakers who are assimilating to the United States. There's also like this really cool motif of like lowrider culture where, they love to trick out their automobiles, they love to customize it, they like to ride low and slow. And there's this interesting contrast. There's like the cool lowriders, and then he runs into the bullies, and the bullies are kind of like the bad lowriders. Rush Limbaugh has this line that a lot of children's books since the 90s have been about conflict resolution, where you kind of like learn to empathize with your bullies and understand, their feelings and help them make peace with each other, right? And I kind of prefer the story where you overcome your bullying problem by getting strong and becoming a man growing up and ensuring peace through superior firepower. But there's kind of like this interesting theme where, they're not bad kids. They're just aimless and they're bored, right? So they'll go around spraying graffiti on the wall because they have nothing else to do. But if you can find them something productive to do, they actually are quite artistic and, vivacious young men. Now, the first kind of intersectional theme is like colonial language versus indigenous language. So the Illyrio the mosquito, he likes indigenous words. And then these guys, ocelot, turkey, and buzzard, they like American words like hamburguesa and baseball. And they've given up their true Spanish names for anglicized names, right? So the theme is, a kid would miss this, but I picked it up. The theme is like white colonial language. The insistence on using a native language like English is a form of colonization, and by learning your native tongue and using your native tongue, you're resisting against that kind of linguistic oppression. The thing about this book is I think that when they have, it has a perspective, it has a worldview guiding the themes, but then to make it effective, they actually have to tap into some like real things. Like lowrider culture is kind of cool. Making art is kind of cool. Being part of like a small little Spanish village where everybody knows each other. Probably everybody would be Catholic if we saw a real world equivalent of this kind of town. Those are all like really cool, kind of like down to earth, meaningful ideas. Oh, good grief, low battery. We're fine. Let's keep going. So, jumping ahead, we meet the other two. Lupa, a smart like girl in STEM research, and actually her, she kind of makes sense. Like she explains really simple things like how bicycles work and how airbrushes work. So she's not like a super duper 8-year-old genius. And this Flapjack the octopus, whose character is, I guess, he's a little kid. I thought this little panel was interesting with the arrow coming down here to kind of like prevent you from like hopping down here early, so you kind of stay up here until the very end. Interesting little convention. But all three of them get bullied for different reasons by the same people. He gets bullied for being a kid. She gets bullied because she's a woman. And lowrider clubs hate women. There's also like an interesting scene. So misogyny, right? There's always like several themes coming together at once. Man, this cold is like, I'm not even on cold medicine and I feel high or something. All right, so misogyny, lesbian representation, indigenous language, the young versus the old. There's an interesting gag where they're going to the lowriders club and they say, well, women can't be in, and then when her moms say, well, we're part of a female lowriders club, they make up a bunch of rules to prevent them from entering. And it kind of reminds me of manga conventions where the manga artist will make something fun or funny by labeling it. So they make up the rules, not even in the rule book, totally made up, completely absurd. And it's fun. It's very funny, empty pages. The gag for a kid is they're making this up. The blank page is right there. None of the main characters can see it, but I can see it. So that's where the comedy comes from. But the theme is obviously the patriarchy invents rules to prevent women from participating, even if they have no other good reason for it. Now, this is raising some questions like, why didn't the lesbian lowrider moms like check the rules and enter like before the day of the competition? I just feel like this is played out. There may be more interesting ways of doing this, but then the kids kind of like unite together and they say, okay, well, the bullies are going to keep us out of their club, so we're going to find cool and creative ways to overcome their impossible challenges for us. And they learn about, how airbrushing works. The mom tells him like to resolve his conflicts by asking the bullies to help him, because we've got like nice peaceful conflict resolution. This was kind of cool. Like the rich guy actually isn't a bad guy. He's just a cool guy who loves cars, so he respects the quality of their cool car. And then they make friends with their bullies, and the day is saved. So what I like about this is a genuinely funky, fun, artistic vibe. I think kids would get a kick out of this. And it isn't propaganda. It's taking the intersectional ideas and actually working those into the narrative in such a way that it'd be hard for a kid to pick it up. What do I mean by that? It'd be hard for a kid to pick up on the themes. And it actually kind of like works those into this sort of nice culture of, the lowrider culture as a cool thing that, you learn from, that you participate in with your community. Everyone in the community loves lowriders. So I feel the love of lowriders, but maybe the question is prompted for me is, do I only care if something is teaching something and it's unsubtle about it? Or do I care if it's teaching something and it actually does a good job of sneaking that into kind of like the world of the story, so it doesn't like take you out of the story too much? I guess there's also, I skipped over this. There's also like a whole section where they talk about, like an art collective, a avant-garde art collective called OSCO, an art collective from Los Angeles. They do performance art where the art is what happens. I just said, that is such a good explanation to little kids of what performance art is. So I talk about performance art and avant-garde art a lot because I think this seems to be really important to the left. And most lay people, even a lot of lay people on the left, don't get conceptual art. They don't like postmodern art. Like, I'll bring up postmodern art, and people who are, straight ticket Democrats, they hate the idea of it. And yet, to the left, postmodern art and experimental art is really important to them. So like art overlapping with intersectional politics, art overlapping with your your personal pain, art sort of like declaring the art museum to be a work of art as a protest to the museums keeping out the people of color and their collective. Gronk, Patsy Valdez. So this was kind of like the most ham-fisted, hey kids, we're going to teach you about some artists section of it, where it didn't really make sense. It didn't really fit with the rest of what was going on. Like, is this the real world or is this a funny animal world? But the reason it's important, I think, is that the left kind of understands the importance of the weird postmodern art movement. I would say the value of it is it's all about experimentation. It's all about seeing what you can get away with. And the sort of 20th century identity art movement brought politics and moral themes, really, back into the world of the arts, when the arts in the 1950s was obsessed with, just pure color and shape, and not in sort of banishing content from the arts. The left actually brought interesting content back into art discussion, sort of contemporary, like down-to-earth people, in Portland, Oregon. They recognize the importance of that, and so they teach that history as a way of kind of presenting the idea that the arts are the way you communicate your worldview to the next generation, and they're really good at it. This is an enjoyable, fun animal romp. It doesn't teach there's an ugly side to the intersectional worldview, I think, that comes across on social media where, professors will complain about, white people and how white people are the only people who can be racist. But I've always said there is a grain of truth in any worldview, including worldviews I disagree with. And when presenting it to children, they focus on kind of like the most obvious things, like misogyny hurts your feelings if you're a girl. It sucks to be picked on because you're young. It sucks to be bullied because of your art. I don't know. So I wasn't too big on the story. I really dig Raoul III's kind of classic 1930s style, so I will try to pick up the rest. And I guess my conclusion is a subtle introduction of intersectional political themes into a children's book, subtle enough that a kid would miss it, but I sure caught it. And I don't know, I'm just interested about this in general. I don't really have a broader point than that, other than just I observed it. Number one Marmaduke fan. Hey kid, with parental guidance, Murder Myth to read. Love ya. Catch you later.